Renting versus buying. Is it worth it to buy a house anymore? Oh, it's such a massive, massive question. So is it worth buying a house? I love owning my own house. I love the fact that it's mine. I love the fact that I can kind of do what I like to it when I want. I don't have to ask permission. I feel a huge sense of ownership and security. But then and it does happen, it happens less now, but it does happen. When we struggle financially, I'm worried about paying my mortgage because I don't really own my house. I own my mortgage. So, you could argue that the house is an investment. You could argue that it's an asset. You could equally argue it's a liability. It's all of those things. And when we bought our last house, so we've only ever bought 2 houses, but when we bought this house that we're in now, everyone was like, oh, this is your forever home. And Emma and I were like, what? So we were just like, it's a long time. So people were like, well, you buy it as an investment, it will grow and you'll sell it. I was like, we're not buying our house thinking about how much money it's going to be worth in so many years and how we can pay that off, or how much we'll make. And we're not buying it as if this is going to be our house forever. We're buying this because we love it. And we really want to make it our family home. We want to raise our children in it. And we're not really thinking of it any further than that. And again, I think that is a very old style way of thinking, or historic style of thinking of like, we're buying this house forever and then we'll have some kids, we'll buy a bigger house, we'll get on the property ladder and we'll scale and so on and so forth. And we get to retirement, the kids are left and we'll downscale. And I think that's part of the issue what we have now from the housing world. One thing that really hit me, and again, didn't teach this in schools, when we signed our very, very first mortgage, we saw how much we were borrowing, and then we saw how much we were going to have to pay back. And those numbers were very different. They were like literally twice. Like, it's a massive difference. So what you pay back over the time is a huge amount of money, depending on your percentage rate. But you could be borrowing 170 grand, and over 30 years, you could be paying back well over £300,000. And you're like, because it's such a long period of time you do, the interest really gets you. And the other things so you end up paying well over what you're paying. You might buy a house for 100, 200 grand, but what you end up paying is far above that. And you get that squared off with yourself by saying, well, yeah, but the value of our house will go up. So, okay, what if it doesn't? And I have seen that. The other side of it, the other negative is, what if you decide to move? You then have to sell your house, and there's fees included in that, as there are fees for buying houses. There's fees included for selling a house, and then you've got to find somebody that wants to buy it, and you've got to go through that whole process of doing that. So I think there's that side of it. If you rent, you have freedom, because you can just almost pick up and leave whenever you like. I appreciate you've got contracts and leases and terms, but you can generally set those to like 6 or 12 months, so at least you know your window's coming up. And therefore you have complete freedom and flexibility. If something breaks or something goes wrong, it's the landlord's responsibility. You don't have this huge amount of debt over your head that you have to make. Yes, you still have to pay your rent, but you don't have this huge debt every month that you're just paying on interest, because everyone will say, well, it's cheaper to buy than it is to rent. You can pay less in a mortgage than you do in rental, and that is true in a lot of cases. But a lot of what you're paying in the mortgage is interest. You're not actually paying that much of the capital. So I think there's a lot of positives about renting. And I think the freedom that it affords is a huge one that's really underrated and understated at the moment. The downside is it's not yours, so you might not be able to paint a wall if you want a certain colour. You obviously run the risk that your landlord may decide that they want you to move out because they're selling it, or they want to move back in, or whatever it is. So there is that risk as well. There is the fact that you may pay more for rental than you do for a mortgage. That is possible. The bills are all equivocal. You're still paying your energy bills, you're still paying your utility bills, you're still paying your house insurance, you're still going to have to pay your council tax and stuff like that. So there's swings and roundabouts really, and I guess it comes back down to what you want to do. And I think for a young person now, or anybody trying to buy a house, is difficult because I have quite a big deposit, and I think that the model in the market is geared against people now. And that is unfortunately the way that our economy is. So I think that's quite tricky. But I think it comes down to the person. Would I buy a house? Probably. If we were going to move, now, if we were going to sell our house and move, would I buy? I don't know. I think it depends on where we go, but we're in a slightly different position in life to a lot of people. So we might be able to afford that additional luxury. And also, I'm a massive risk taker. So, we moved out of the rental house that we had a few years ago. When we were buying our house, we'd already had an offer on our house and it had been accepted, but we were going away to New Zealand for a few weeks. So we actually gave up our tenancy. We were away for 6 weeks. So we actually gave up the place we were in at the end of our tenancy, and we actually had a 7-week period between having no place and buying the new one. So what we did is we moved all of our stuff out of the house and put it into storage. And then what we did was we went away to New Zealand, and we just went knowing that we were, in theory, buying this house, but it wasn't 100% guaranteed. And people were saying, well, what if it falls through? And I went, well, if it falls through, then I've got a huge amount of cash in my bank, which is the deposit, and we'll just rent somewhere for a short period of time. We'll stay in a hotel. And I just wasn't too worried. I was like, we'll just figure it out because the cash is in the bank that I'm going to use for the deposit, so I'll just use that in the interim. So, so I kind of take that sort of risk, really. When you buy property, we've bought a fair bit of commercial property. And I think, we do that because of the type of businesses we run and operate. And I think that's an interesting way of looking at it. It's a slightly different mindset, slightly different process, but is it better to buy your business premises as opposed to renting your business premises? For us, it makes absolute sense to buy it because our business premises is what we run our business as. You can't run prison tours anywhere but in a prison. So by owning the prison, we own our own destiny. If I was running a marketing company, for example, I probably wouldn't buy the building because why would I? Because I don't need the building to run the marketing business. I can run the marketing business from anywhere. I'd probably rent it and give the headache of any problems to someone else. The only reason you buy your building is because you're trying to influence the valuation of your business. So if you're going to sell it, you can try and leverage it off the building. But then you're not selling your business value, you're selling a building value. You might as well just invest in property. I've digressed a little, but anyway. I've been wanting to get the podcast moving for years now. And I think this is exactly where the podcast will have mileage and merit. And as an entrepreneur, I'm always looking at it again in that white space. I'm going to pledge to you guys that I'm going to go and find some people. I'm going to go find somebody who has recently bought a house. I'm going to find somebody that is thinking about buying a house, somebody in that world, and maybe in mortgage sort of space, and potentially somebody that's bought a house but lost a house or had it made a real problem. So maybe four people together, and we'll get around a table and we'll just have like an hour's discussion around what's better, like which way to go, what to do, because I have my opinion, but I'm opinionated. And really what you want to hear is other people that are doing it and experiencing it in live situation. So I think that's what we'll do, and we'll bring that together, and I think that'll be a really, really good podcast to listen to and to do. So if you're one of those people, if you've just bought a house recently, if you're thinking about buying a house, if you've always rented and you're never thinking about doing it, if you're somebody that is in probably the mortgage world, maybe even real estate space, let us know, and we'll bring you into the podcast, and we'll do that as all part of that Join Joel podcast. If you're one of those people, let us know. Love to hear your thoughts on it, because we'll bring all of that into the table into the Join Joel podcast, and let's run one on whether it is better to buy or rent, the ups and the downs of both, and let's see what people think. So this has been Entrepreneur Life with me, Joel Campbell, and I am an entrepreneur.